Oh my god, I just got out of my dance class and I'm all fired up. So I figure it's a great time to talk about something I've been thinking about a whole lot, which is ageism. So I'm just gonna sit in this field and do it. So before I talk about ageism, I just wanna say that I am a young woman. And so I talk about ageism from the perspective of a young woman, which means there's a bunch of shit I don't know, and there may be some things I do know from the perspective of my experience. So ageism is one of those weird things that we don't talk about very often, and I think it's partly because we don't know how to talk about it. You know, I'm in this school where we do a lot of like processing the emotions underneath social issues. And sometimes it'll be time for a group process and it's like, all right, who's got a fucking issue? And people are like immigration, refugees, homophobia, whatever. And in this one course that I was in, there was this one woman who every time the professor asked, she would say ageism. And we didn't do it, and we did a billion of these. We were together for like 5 weeks, and every time she'd be like, ageism, and then we would vote on what we were gonna do on, and people did not choose ageism until the very last group process, where it became very obvious why we had waited so long to go in it. It was just because it was so fucking intense. The polarization between young women and old women, it was intense between parents and children, and it was deeply intense because when we speak about age, we're also touching on mortality. That the weight of talking about ageism comes not only from the social marginalization, but also from this deeper question of existence and of needs. One reason it might be hard to talk about age is because it's such a double bind. Like if you're old, there's certain privileges you have for being older and certain discriminations that you face. And the same if you're young, you get a lot of privileges for being young and certain discriminations. And as with all of this stuff, it's easier for us to see the places where we're discriminated against and to see the things that we can't do or don't have access to because of our age, as opposed to seeing the privileges that it affords us. I'm personally in this weird place because I just turned 30, and just at this like weird time in history in the United States, 30 is considered old. And even if you look astrologically, there is a significant chapter that ends when you turn 30 and a different one that begins that we call the Saturn return. That sort of has this like doomsday folklore in pop culture when it comes to astrology. But it is a transition period in life that holds interesting tensions between being both old and young. You know, when I was down in LA, I was talking to someone about how I wanted to learn how to sing. I've always wanted to sing, and I love to sing, and I feel like I'm no good at it. And so I wanted to commit time and resources and learn how to actually sing. And the person who I was talking to is really ambition focused. And what they said to me is, oh, come on, it's not like you're gonna go anywhere with that. Like in their mind, the fact that I was in my late 20s or 30 years old meant that I had passed the age where I could become famous or make a career out of doing something like singing, which is insane ageism, that like in the first third of your life, there are already that many doors that are closed to you. And at the same time, 30 to me feels so young. I feel like there are all these things that I can't do or say because of the age that I am. I was getting supervision on a therapy client of mine, and I said, you know, if I was 56, I could say this to them. And my teacher said, you know, I have some interventions that I can't do till I'm 80. You know, it's like if I were 80, I could do that. And what she was encouraging me to do is to kind of like tap into the 56-year-old inside myself, just like she was trying to tap into that 80-year-old inside herself and find a way to be able to say these things that she felt limited by. I was just in Greece for this conference, and I was really struck that there's no word for ageism in Greece. There's a word for coming into old age, and there's a word for a more mature woman, but they don't have the pernicious, effusive, all-pervasive ageism that we have in the United States that would necessitate them creating a word for it. I think this is partly because they honor these different stages of life more in their society. That if you are an old woman for example, because I do think ageism plays out differently for women than for men. If you are an older woman in Greek society, you have more of a place. There are different cultural confines and limitations from that place being defined probably by your position in the home and as a mother and as a grandmother, but you are respected within that. You are seen as the heart and center of your community and of your family, in a way where here we have women talking about how when they reach even middle age, even early middle age, they all of a sudden become invisible. There was this woman at the conference who shared that she'd gone to the same conference 20 years earlier and it had been like paradise. It had been like coming home, and everyone was so interested in her, and she had all these amazing connections and conversations. And now, 20 years later, she's a little bit older, and those same people that had so inspired her 2 decades before will walk into a room and just glaze over her, not even see her at all. And she was looking to make sense of this experience and could barely, because there wasn't a word for ageism in her language, in Greek. And it just made me realize the full extent to which I have come to see ageism as a natural part of society and social interactions when it's entirely fabricated, and is probably a product in a large part of the fact that we don't have models for how to mature through life in United States society, that kind of social fabric has fallen apart. And I don't want to get into that kind of thinking where it's like, oh, we need to go back to village life, and oh, we need to understand village ways, because I believe that we grew out of culture and are going through this period of chaos and the breaking down and dissolving of boundaries in order to reorganize ourselves at a different level of complexity that honors individual freedom, but is also able to weave that individuality back into a more horizontally organized collective. I have this amazing older woman in my life who is my teacher, and I am her assistant, and we go and do these sort of women's retreats, and she's almost 70. So a lot of the women who come to these retreats are in that next transition of life, that next Saturn cycle that happens in your late 50s, early 60s. And these women are coming to these workshops kind of looking for new identities. You know, their kids are in college, they've retired, and they're asking themselves these questions. Who am I now, and what do I want to do with this next phase of life? And I'm so astounded and in awe of these women, because it's actually them going through these processes of deep internal investigation to find how they authentically want to live, that is carving those new roles in society that are outside of traditional gender roles from past cultures, and that are outside of the limitations and constraints of what is valued for women in the United States right now. It's actually them and what they find that is paving the way for me and the options and known models that'll be available for me. And it's fucked up because our society in the United States super infantilizes us. And it infantilizes us in order to manipulate us to serve the capitalist system. This infantilization plays a strange trick where it deprives us from our own authority. It deprives us from the opportunities to be the authors of our lives. And instead we look to, you know, mommy of these like easily accessible domestic pleasures, and to daddy of the social sphere and of the government and of, you know, our bosses to tell us how to live. And that beauty that I see with these women and what I see with the potential for eldership is to become that author, to regain your own authority, to write the pages, to complete the story of your life, and to integrate the wisdom of your experiences in your own unique way, and then give that back, to share back with everyone around you. We also have a super individualistic society with interfaces with this infantilization in a strange way, because on the one hand, our needs are purported to be fulfilled by capitalism and the chance for upward mobility, but they are often met inadequately or only in part. Like, sure, we can buy a lot of things, sure, we can try to advance ourselves in society, but when it comes to true fulfillment, and when it comes to those things that really nourish us as a person, you know, buying beer or achieving success in your work only goes so far. And because they're unfulfilled, that's precisely why they're able to be manipulated, because we are never filled truly and wholly, and so we're always looking for something that's going to fill that gap inside us between the way that these societies say they can meet our needs and their failure to do so. On the other hand, because we're so hyper-individualistic, we're encouraged not to have any needs at all, or to be able to completely take care of our own needs without asking for anything from anybody. I think this is part of the fear of age, is that we're going to lose both the beauty and the autonomy that our society prizes so dearly. When I was watching my grandmother die, the most horrifying thought to her was that she was going to leave this whole house for us to have to deal with, and that she was going to have to be cared for, that she was going to have to ask for help and desperately need it, you know, even to these extents of people, you know, changing her diapers and feeding her and giving her medicines. That thought haunted her so deeply that she spent, you know, the last moments of her life emptying out her own house, making sure she had all of her paperwork in order, refusing our desire to help us, which made the grieving process almost more difficult for us, that we couldn't really be there with her in it, and that we couldn't show our love through that embodied support. One of the women from Greece told this beautiful and amazing story. There are all these refugees and immigrants coming into that country right now, and there's a lot of prejudice against them. There's also this beautiful welcoming of the Greek spirit that for millennia has prized generosity and that true art of hosting other people, which is part of the way that they've been able to maintain their humanity in the face of really difficult economic and social situations. But you know, like, we're human beings and we always fear the other. And so this woman, this Greek woman, was living in a building, and this, I forget if it was Pakistani or something like that, family moved in, a couple with a new baby. And people were like, ugh, the smells and the noises. You know, they were already kind of creating that other right there in their apartment building. And then the baby had horrible colic and was screaming and yelling all the time, and people started to interpret this as the Bangladeshi family couldn't take care of their child, and that the food wasn't good for the child, and maybe they didn't even know how to care for it or were abusing it. And so this Greek woman, who is very smart, realized that if you can get people on the team, then it humanizes everyone. That if we're united in a common purpose, and if we're united around parts of ourselves that we inherently value and admire, that we can overcome this othering that's so intrinsic to our human nature. So she went around to everyone in the building and said that the Pakistani family was really poor and that they needed money for milk for the baby. And even though people in her building were in dire straits economically, unemployment is huge in Greece right now, and pensions are being slashed, which is a whole thing. But even people who had really little gave €1, gave 50 cents, gave what they had for milk for the baby. And eventually, this Pakistani family was able to move, and they moved to a better place, and the husband got a job and all that. And one of the old Greek men, who'd been one of the most vocal voices against this Pakistani family, a few weeks after they move, comes tuk 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 knocking on this Greek woman's door. And he says, I'm so embarrassed about this, but my pension was cut and I can't pay my gas bill. And if I can't pay my gas bill, then I can't pay my heat. And if I don't have heat, I'm afraid that I'll die. I mean, seriously, when it comes to asking for our needs, these are matters of life and death, in addition to being matters of connection and feeling supported, which are also matters of life and death. And so this woman said, of course, and she gave him the money. And what she realized is that before she had asked him for milk money, he never would have felt okay asking her for help, right? that somehow in her asking for money for the baby, and because it was a baby that was so innocent, it allowed for room in the system for people to ask for their needs to be met. So this is what we fear. This is what we fear, is having to ask for that. And at the same time, when we do, it's a gift to other people, and it actually ties us deeper together. And because we have a hyper-individualistic society, because a lot of the social fabric is so divided, it's when we ask for our needs that we reunite together again. Of course, people aren't always going to want to do that, but because they've been so conditioned by society. But I mean, they're fucking assholes, and this is the medicine, and everyone has something they can do. And we all know that place of giving back that doesn't come from charity, but that comes from a sense of solidarity that feeds every part of us and makes us all that much better. So again, getting back to this idea of age, you know, in Buddhism they talk about being childlike and cultivating a childlike mind and a playful attitude towards life, about reinvigorating our curiosity and our ability to wonder and be fascinated by things. In process work, we talk a lot about being elderful at any age. And I think what we mean when we talk about being elderful is this ability to be compassionate and fluid. It's actually this ability to kind of overcome that tendency to other and to commune, to communicate, to feel into the other side, to have understanding for them and have understanding for you and for everyone else in the system, and to be able to move fluidly in a way where you're connected both inside to what you authentically feel, but also able to feel a little bit of how you are that other person and to integrate it inside yourself. And also kind of get to the heart of it, right? Like if you see that someone's really angry about something or really prejudiced against something, to sort of be able to understand the emotional place, the place of needs and feelings and identity where it's coming from. And to see that other person as multiple too, to see them as more than their fear or than their anger in the moment. So if we apply this to your actual age, it means being able to kind of detach from that more kind of like consensus reality number and the expectations of what that means you're supposed to be, both that you carry inside yourself and that the society carries inside yourself, and be a little bit more fluid, right? Like some days I feel like a baby and I have all these needs and I'm just this little baby, and some days I do feel like this 80-year-old person and I find just this contentment and understanding inside myself. Sometimes I feel 46 and incredibly capable and driven, and all of that has to do with my own associations with different ages. But even the fact that I have those associations means that they all exist inside myself. And I can cultivate this fluidity of age inside, even when it's really difficult to actualize that outside. You know, we can't change the age that we are, and we can't change the way that our dream character appears to other people. You know, I have a really hard time actually sometimes feeling empowered among these older women who I work with my teacher, you know, because I feel like my place being younger than them is that I should listen and be respectful, and that I can't comment on the things that I see because I don't understand the experience of what it's like to be a 60-year-old woman and asking these questions. And it's also hard for me sometimes, you know, when I'm with older men, I also feel like they see me as this like sweet young thing, and it's hard for me to pick up my power, you know, to pick up my power and to act in those situations with the elderful part inside of me, or to even feel free to act the way I would if I was 46. You know, I can feel however I am able to inside, and cultivating that internal fluidity is such a beautiful thing, but actualizing it out in the world is harder and there are more edges to it. And the only answer that I've been able to find, the only kind of path forward that I see is, you know, time marches on and age will continue and I eventually will be 46. But for now, I can use the time that I have to cultivate my authentic style, to find what my way would be of bringing in my elderful qualities as well as my childlike qualities genuinely into those interactions. And maybe even using the way that my physical appearance looks to other people to my advantage. With this other woman, you know, she was talking about wanting to travel a lot and she's thought that her kids wouldn't like that. And I said, oh, well, you know, as a young woman, I would be so happy if my parents went traveling. You know, actually, I feel like the greatest gift that my parents could give me would be to follow their own dreams, you know, and to really build their own life exactly the way that they want to. And it was this complicated moment between, on the one hand, I was identified with the disadvantaged part of being a young person, as opposed to the power of actually being able to use being a young person in that situation. And I was associating her as having all of this power for being an older person, as opposed to seeing the ways that she feels disempowered by her age. And so in that moment, I think just the best thing we can do is acknowledge the whole fucking scene of it. The hard thing that I have to face is that it actually feels really safe for me to just feel like I'm a young person, right? That's actually an easy place for me to be, which is that I don't know anything and I can't say anything and like people see me a certain way. And even though that's painful for me, even though oftentimes there are a lot of things I want to say and a lot of things that I want to do and it's like hard because I can't because I'm young, you know, I have to acknowledge that even that pain serves me because it helps me stay small. And so part of this stepping into my own eldership, my own wisdom, my own leadership, and finding my style of how to bring that forward is all part of this really beautiful process of finding my way, finding my voice. And my ultimate style might be to do that in a childlike way or in a playful way, but not only. You know, my ultimate style might also be to do that in more of a elder way, but not only, right? Because we're always looking for wholeness. And I think that's the real value of even what we're talking about when we say eldership is just feeling free to be ourselves, no matter what age we are, which of course also means dealing with what age we are. Yes. So those are some things that I want to say about ageism. There's so much more, man. There's so much more to say about society and fucking mortality and like fucking whatever shit. But that's all I got for now because I gotta go shower. All right. Love you all and wishing you the absolute best now and always.